Hello, hope you're all doing well. Today, in this lecture, we're going to talk about Chapter 11 of Global Strategic Management and focus on the area of global operations and digital networks. This chapter is a little bit complex, there's a lot to it, because we're really going over the type of decisions that corporations make when they look at some key factors. And these key factors are really along the lines of, where should they set up, the location type decisions they need to make. Companies decide where their operation should be in terms of the selling part, the manufacturing part, managerial part, etc. So the location issues, and then the second element look at is how responsibilities are to be allocated. Depending on where you are physically, you may have that may influence the way things are set up. Where the decisions are made, or it can be just the head office. It doesn't matter where. The company has physical locations. They make certain decisions at certain places, but those have to be chosen. How should a company locate their responsibility decision making? And then there's the procurement function. Where should they get stuff? Where do they need to source the raw materials? Where should the resources in terms of people be derived? Where should they get their financing? What markets are better for the issuance of debt or bonds or whatever they happen to be? So those resource procurement functions are really important, and that often also depends on geography. You might place your factory closer to where your source of power is, for example, or your source of a certain metal that you need for your production, or where the labor costs are the cheapest. And finally, you have the element of managerial issues or logistics. How do you make the choice and the decisions related to how things are processed, how things move from one to another? How is your inventory control, your production lines? How are things interconnected and working together for your production? So we're going to look at that now. I've got a PowerPoint on this. I suggest you please do call that up at the same time as you go over there. I kind of refer more directly to the slides than the book. Although of course a lot of it is in from the book, but the slides are hopefully the things that are more key to what you need to know and highlight that, and because there's a lot in the book, of course. First, let's look at the concept of offshoring. Offshoring is when you set up your factories outside your home country, or other distribution elements or other things you need to do that you do outside your home country. And you basically do that to take advantage of things like maybe local skills, opportunities, lower costs, or to sell into the local market with more ease. So these are the reasons why people offshore. It's to economic benefit. You look at all the pros and cons of being somewhere outside your home country and think, well, it's better for us because our either distribution side is made easier, or the obtaining of things is either cheaper, or more closer to the market, or closer to the production side, or whatever. But those are the reasons why people are pushed offshore. The other reason is always in the mind of the people doing the strategy for the company. They may just want to be global. They may want to be, in a bunch of geographies. Sometimes each individual spot doesn't make as much sense as the overall. So you have to look at not only how each element is functioning, but also how does that tie in with the overall strategy and positioning of the company. On slide 3, we look at the value chains, and the managing a global value chain. It says, like it says on the slide, you need to make the location decision, the role definitions, like we just talked about on the opening, and then highlight that. Do look at that and kind of remember that those are the 4 things you need to manage when you're looking at your global value chain. Make sure that you think about that when you're doing strategy. What kind of location, roles, procurement area, and the managerial logistics. When you look at offshoring, like we go to slide, what is that, 4 or 5? When you look at the benefits of offshoring, often there are, and you see this, it makes a logical sense. You say, well, why are they doing this? And you look at the cost elements. There are labor costs involved. Why are so many companies manufacturing in China? The biggest push would be the labor costs, the skilled labor, what they perceive to be a favorable attitude towards foreign companies being there. And then there are the tax issues, of course, and of course we've had huge change in that over recent months, the change in corporate tax here in the U.S. that will completely impact a lot of companies' decision to manufacture overseas or in the U.S. The U.S. prior to that tax reform had probably the highest corporate tax rate of any industrialized nation in the world, so that companies producing here were at a tax disadvantage compared to producing and selling other places, and that was the point of that, and it will, for better or for worse, it has a lot of impact. So those are the kind of things people look at when you think about offshoring: labor, operational costs, taxation, and incentives. Sometimes it's cheaper to do things in other places, and sometimes it's not. And sometimes it looks cheaper, but based on when you get the overall costs in with the legal costs and other things that can happen, the overall tends to be higher. The other thing is the proximity. Are you closer to your customer? Are you closer to suppliers? It can be highly beneficial to be physically located or in those type of places. If you're a mining company and you come, and obviously you have to go where the metal is, but also sometimes when you're a production company and some of the components of what you use is a mineral or a metal of some kind, then you can be there closer too. And also on the sales side, that's obvious that depending on what kind of thing you're selling and the size of it and the distribution network you need, it may be more useful to be closer. Then there's the environment. Next slide, the professional, intellectual, and quality of life. A lot of times I look at a company's decision to go in another country as if it were a personal decision to go to another country. What are the things that you would look at as a family? Say you're thinking, we should move to this country. What are you going to look at? You're going to look at a lot of these same issues. Of course, they're a little bit differently applied, but it helps to, I think, sometimes make it personalized. That what's my quality of life? Because that's your workers all have to have a quality of life there. So what is it going to be like for them? What are the intellectual facilities there available? What kind of universities do they have? What sort of level of education do I need for my company and is available in that market? Which you would think as if you're moving there yourself. What kind of educational environment will it be for my family? On the professional side, what are the banks like? What are the legal situation like? What is the rule of law? All these kind of things are important, and it would be for you as a person also. If I move there, what are my property rights going to be? How do people respect the law? What's the strength of the police? What's the strength of the government, etc. And the learning side, you're learning from your suppliers, your customers. Sometimes companies will make a decision in order to acquire knowledge, and that happens domestically as well. Of course, people come up with great ideas. They're proprietary, and companies may think, I want to either hire that person, buy that company. I need to know what they know, and it's the same thing can occur. Obviously, the U.S. is not the only place where smart people come up with things. So, in a lot of other countries are far advanced in certain areas, in banking and telephones, etc. So it can be really useful for companies to go and acquire either the people, the knowledge, or the expertise that's available in other countries, and add that to their mix of things that they have. There are a lot of countries, and many of you probably you're from another country, but you come here to study, and so it gives a tremendous opportunity for advancement in terms of awareness. You know what you know from your country, you know what you know from this country, and then maybe you might do another degree or do traveling somewhere else. So by the time you put all that together, you're a very well-rounded person. You've seen a lot of things, and you develop when you go to start a business or something. It's with that overall mix of components in your head and in your awareness and your approach that can make you valuable. And that's the kind of thing that you see, like when companies look at certain markets, what kind of people are going to be able to get there, and where have they been in terms of their mental and cultural processes. The next slide is on logistics. Logistics are basically three major things: your allocation, which products and what quantities and when and where should they go, and it's dependent upon a lot of things. Of course, the demand for them, specialization, all the things you see in that slide there, the level of acceptable inventories, etc. And then there's distribution and transportation. So logistics is basically getting things from where they are to where they need to be, and all the different things along the way. This is a huge area for companies, especially big companies, well, anybody, but of potential cost and potential cost savings if you get it right. If you can move your inventory appropriately through the different areas or the production facilities or processes, or you can figure out ways to limit the inventory sitting there not doing anything, or all those sorts of things, it can make a huge difference on your bottom line. There are people that are exceptionally good at this, and you'll see that almost every company will have sloppiness in this area that can be fixed. A lot of external consultants come in and they only look at your processes because you're in it, you can't see it, or you don't even know it. A lot of times when I do consulting deals with particularly with banks, what they think they're doing and what they're actually doing are way different. So if you look at say, how do you process a check, and they say, well, it goes like this, like this, like this. You look into it, and it's not quite that way. There are often way more people involved than they think. There are times when it falls off the table and somebody has to manually input something. What they think is automated often isn't fully automated. So, and that's even if you expand that on a bigger scale across different geographies and around the world, you'll see things that can be hugely beneficial to fix, and that's why you see big companies are very much focused on this area of logistics because it is a cost element. I wanted to look at a couple companies here, one of which is Apple. Now you're all real familiar with Apple, and I want to look at Apple and Amazon are two big, the FAMGA type, the Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Apple, Amazon, which I've already said, that one of those other A's. But anyway, you see that they're very different companies. Their huge company presence is enormous now, of course, and you all probably have an Apple something in your pocket or on your desk or somewhere. So it's important to look at how they do things. They're really different. Apple has I'd almost call it a traditional supply chain. They have manufacturing facilities that are often, one of the biggest one is in China, where they make most of the phones, and then they send those to distribution centers in Cupertino, California, and other places. But primarily, the big ones are in certain locations in California, in Japan, Singapore, UK, etc. So they make them in a place, they ship them to warehouse distribution centers, and then they have retail stores all over the place, which you see, of course, here in wherever you go in the big malls, they'll have an Apple store, which is always a fun experience to go in. And I like going there just to watch how it works. But so they're quite traditional way. They build in a certain place, they ship to distribution centers, then those send to retail areas all around the world. It works very well for them. They sell, of course, in the billions, and their company's recently been valued at $1 trillion, which is a first. So that's their method, and it's because they have a physical thing that they're selling. Now, you look at their supplier base; it's just huge. What they do, and how they're impacted. If you look, it's interesting just to do reading on Apple and see the difficulties they often have. What they work with in China it's not a smooth operation whatsoever. In fact, you can see a lot of when we look at intellectual property rights, a lot of the Chinese knockoff type brands of phones are obviously stolen directly from Apple's research development and their technological advancements they've made. You can buy other phones in China that look they're exactly the same. Somehow they've obtained all the elements of Apple phones. They make them in other companies, and they compete directly with Apple. I've even seen lawsuits brought by these companies against Apple for saying they stole their technology when it's clearly the other way around. But in the overall, whatever, we don't know how, all the elements of this, but Apple finds it beneficial to produce in China, so they're doing that. You look at a competitor. There's Amazon. I'm not really a competitor, but another digital type company. Amazon, they started in 1994. Of course, your local guy. Jeff Bezos went to Palmetto High School here in South Miami. So it's interesting to follow this company and his career. And I'm sure if you're like me, when you think about buying anything from clothes to dog food to sneakers to whatever it might be, your first stop is often Amazon, and it's just been turned into a tremendous thing. If you click on the YouTube thing there on the bottom of that slide on Amazon, it's very interesting because you can see how it works. It works differently from you might imagine. The Amazon model is, of course, they have these gigantic warehouses all over the place, fulfillment centers, and what you might think they do is they would say, well, they have all their sneakers in one place and all their pots and pans in another place, and the outdoor electrical lighting and the Christmas things and dog food all in sections, and they really don't do that. That what they do is they put anything anywhere. They just shove it into all these cubby holes and cubicles and stuff all over their warehouses. But their inventory control system is so powerful that they know exactly where it is. So when they need to get something, they look it up. It can be, so one bin, as you'll see in that video, may hold all those different things we've mentioned, from any number of things, from sneakers to shoes to books they're in one thing, but they know where it is because of their inventory tracking system. So they go exactly to that thing, pick it up, zip it over, and there's a lot of manual intervention, which I've seen Alibaba in China. They do it more, more with robots, etc. And that's, but right now you see a lot of manual intervention in Amazon. They go grab that thing and ship it to you really fast. But it's based on inventory control. Their focus is a little bit different. Their value chain really starts with the customers. What do the customers want? And that's why when you're looking at Amazon, you'll see come up and say, maybe you like this book. That's because they're trying to figure out what book you like based on the books you've read, or you try to sell you something related to what you've done in the past with them. So they look at the customer first, and then that works into their websites, the local supplier, transportation, and back into delivery. So, and you'll see more and more companies on their whole value chain and the logistics starting to think more about what the first stop is a customer. What does the customer want? And then you're back into that all the way through the logistic chain, the value chain, back to the customer delivery, which is a little bit different in the past, where companies thought, this one I will make, and then I'm going to figure out how to get it to the customer, assuming demand. I mean, demand, they always knew what the customer wanted, or they thought they did, but it was less flexible, as you see now with the technology is possible. So those are two very interesting things, and again, look at the two YouTube links that are on the slides there for Apple and for Amazon. I think they're really beneficial. Now, the big change, of course, that's happened over the recent years is the internet and global operations. How the internet has affected global operations is amazing. So it's basically a global tool, and it's changed the way the physical elements of business are viewed. There are a lot of, like you say, Apple still has a tremendous amount of physical capacity, physical need, physical distribution. However, many companies, even for them, of course, so much is based around the way the digital economy and the digital world is affecting them. Transmission of data, images, sounds, all sorts of things are affected. So everything has changed with the internet, and the impact of the big data, artificial intelligence, artificial reality. All these things are the client data mining. They're happening, but we can only imagine that they're going to be accelerated. It's not unusual for you. I know many of you experience this. If you're sitting in your living room and you happen to be talking to somebody about taking a trip to Bali, chances are within a few minutes or hours you're going to get a spam email on Bali. Your phone is if you have Alexa in your house, or your phone, anything you do, anything you talk about, anything you email to somebody else will be picked up, and somebody's going to try to sell you something based on your behavior. You may not be uncomfortable with that because of you've grown up that way, But it's surprising to a lot of people that so much is being monitored. In a way, it helps you make better decisions on what you're going to buy because you already get folk. But it is intrusive. But you'll see that more and more and more as years go by, that all the elements of technology will be brought to bear to try to get you to buy something and try to help you buy what you want, or what you think you want. So it's a big change, and especially with the communication. Of course, in my career, we went from, if you lived overseas, one of the best things about living overseas is you were isolated, and you only talked to head office if you wanted to. You could always say, I didn't get the phone call, the phone dropped, or the phone didn't even work. You would have, my early overseas assignments were in Brazil, and you would have a secretary get on the line and wait for a long distance line, and the wait might be 5 minutes to 20 minutes before a line would open up and you could make your call to your head office. So it's pretty easy to say, oh, I didn't get your phone call, I didn't get your telex, imagine. And then we went through a time where we started putting modems in our client's office, and they were big things and stuck the phone in there and wiggled around, make sure you got a signal. All sorts of things like that. But those are almost incomprehensible things these days, where there is no excuse for not getting something. People can't say, oh, I didn't get that, I was on vacation. Well, everybody works on vacation, everybody works on the weekend, everybody works at 4 in the morning. So you're always in connection, always linked, and that's a gigantic change from past times. If you look at this slide, what is it, 10, you see the internet and global operations. And there you see the amount of users in various countries. And of course, China's got a billion people or more, and 300 million of them are online. And the States, we have 300 million people here, and 230, probably that's a little bit more now as every minute has gone by. But you see the amount of people that are connected, and it's ubiquitous. Everybody's connected. It's amazing, and things have really come down in price in terms of data usage and what it costs. But it's also become a very big expense to every single one of you. Has a monthly big expense to stay connected, which is it's like shoes, you can't avoid it. If you look around that next slide, digital around the world in 2018, you see of the world's population of 8 billion people, half of them are internet users, and that's really just growing by every day. So it's clear that everybody's connected, and sometimes you would think people that in the poorer countries would be less so, but actually sometimes they're not that way. Actually, everybody's connected because that's the only means they have of effective communication. You'll see this continue. Those percentages will continue to increase over the very short amount of time until it's virtually everyone connected on the internet, acting and reacting to what they see there. The effects on globalization. It's some of it's very obvious, some of it's not so obvious, and some of it's happening and will continue to happen even faster. For companies, global markets, it makes obviously communication, marketing instantaneous. It used to be, you'd roll out some in your head office, slowly it would migrate around the country, and then slowly it would start in your overseas offices, and that's not the case anymore. Any new practice, any new best practice or anything new or different immediately is available and seen everywhere. You used to be able to say, I don't need to sell that there. They don't even know it exists. Well, everybody knows everything exists now. So the marketing and communication is much, much quicker. You can manage and discuss things a lot easier now than you used to be able to. Hold meetings, virtual meetings anytime, communicate anytime. It's just instantaneous. A big thing is the small businesses. I do. I work with a lot of smaller companies, and I teach a class here on entrepreneurship, and the impact on the internet on small businesses is tremendous. All of a sudden you're a competitor. All of a sudden you have a website like everybody else does. You can promote yourself, your company. You can be as colorful, big, and flashy as anybody else. It's completely different how much that used to cost and what you can do now. to be a player or to be in the game at least as a small business. It's totally different, and what you can market and sell overseas or around the world. If you do a global learning type initiative, you can as long you can translate in different languages, you can sell that anywhere in the world from your living room, and it's completely different from how things used to be. On a global competitive side, you can reduce the cost of transactions. You basically, your workers can be, we've all talked to call centers in India. People are shipping their X-rays and things in different countries where a person might have a medical degree, be just as qualified as someone in the States or any other more developed country. However, the cost of living is so low, and that you can pay them what we would consider a very low amount of money to do a very high quality view of diagnostics or reviewing or any kind of intellectual activity that they're able to do that would just do it a lot cheaper. And there's also innovation. With the connectivity, you see things much quicker, so you can say, man, this really worked in Malaysia. Let's see if it works here. You may not even heard about it before, but now you hear about it, you see how it applies, you make some tweaks, and you can start. Well, I've worked in Malaysia, and somebody in the head office can say, well, we also work in France. The guy in Malaysia doesn't know the guy in France, but you do. And so you can see what works there and how to pull that in and see how it applies there. And for consumers, there's just no comparison. Your buying power, your ability to affect sales, to affect the perception of companies, of products, the way you can comment, tell, the kind of idea, like tell a friend, well, now you're telling all your connections. It's completely empowering as a consumer, the way things are going. You can buy things from all over the place, and you have information on that, and you can really manage your consumerism in a way that was unthinkable before. And you can see, of course, the comparison. I mean, no one can sell you something for X amount more than somebody else because you just compare that. And there are even, as you know, apps that you can go around and put your phone next to something in Macy's, and Amazon will tell you whether they have it available for less or more. So you can do things like that were just not possible before, that give you a lot more power. The consumer can also start affecting production. The way the supply, some companies are starting already and will do more. They'll find out what you want first, and then they go back to make it. You might say you want to make shirts, and plaid shirts. They might run a quick thing on the internet, and people say, I don't like that. I like plaid, but I don't like that plaid. And I like this one a little bit better. They can adjust the design before they make the first shirt, and then they can get feedback and get that out to you in the way you want it, rather than make a bunch of something that nobody may buy. So I think that's it for what we're looking at here. I think the key things, as you see, are those first parameters on how you think about logistics, on your location, on your manager, who does what where. And that's a lot based on what's available in those different geographies, and then you move through the different value chains and the logistics, and finally the effects of globalization on the internet on globalization. It's astounding what's happening and what will continue to happen. It's very difficult to keep up with that, but I think you as consumers are probably see it the best on what you get and what you're able to buy and what you're able to see and how you're being marketed to is way different, and it'll continue to increase the awareness of what you want and who you are, and companies will continue to pay for that in order to make sure they get you what you want to buy. All right, thanks a lot. Hope that helped.